before the Burnout franchise became a staple for EA, before even buying out Criterion, Sony announced the PlayStation Portable at E3 2003 as a direct and more powerful competitor to Nintendo, which completely owned the handheld gaming market with the Game Boy and Game Boy Advance. Alex Ward was interviewed by IGN on March 2004 and was asked if a Burnout title was possible on the PSP. He said there's a good chance it was. Then he was asked if it would do well on the PSP commercially. Ward thought it would, but they needed to know the final specs first, as a handheld PS2 was too promising to ignore. And then finally, Ward was asked straight up, are you developing a Burnout game for the upcoming PSP? Ward confirmed they were making a game for that system, but didn't say it was Burnout specifically, which is like saying they weren't denying nor confirming it, which might as well count as being confirmed. Now, this interview was before Burnout 3 Takedown was released, before we could wonder how something this special could be replicated on a portable console, and only less than a year after Criterion swore never to work with EA after the Skate on Die reboot fiasco, which I mentioned in my Burnout 3 review. However, just a few months later, they eventually confirmed it was a Burnout game. Criterion officially announced the title Burnout Legends for the PSP on May 2005 and released in September, only 1 week before Burnout Revenge, and received a Nintendo DS port in November, and we will look at both versions for this review. As I went through the Burnout series over the years on this channel, I never talked about the PSP title simply because I don't actually have a PSP, only a PS Vita. I wanted to wait until I got my hands on the former and figure out how to capture gameplay natively on the console properly, since some games on the PSP aren't available on the PlayStation Store. I did have a PlayStation TV which I used to capture gameplay and review GTA Chinatown Wars and Gran Turismo, which worked well. And Burnout Legends was available on the PS Store for the Vita, but not anymore. Now, Lance McDonald, who I was borrowing the PS TV off, has it back, and I used up as much of the space as I could on my proprietary memory card in the Vita, and they're way too expensive than they're worth by this point. So nowadays, I don't feel bad using an emulator to play the PSP titles I've been meaning to review for a long time, this being one of them. Criterion asked themselves, how do you fit in everything that made Burnout a masterpiece? How do you bring that sense of speed, the detail of the crashes, and the same volume of content onto a universal media disc? They listened to feedback from the fans, and they loved the increased arcade-style aggression from Burnout 3. But they also loved the circuits from the first two Burnout games, and that's how they decided to create a greatest hits of the Burnout franchise up to that point, and on a portable console no less. To make up for the limitations compared to a home console like the PlayStation 2, they used the Burnout 3 lighting style and added the necessary visual indicators to help make the game the speed of V3 readable on a small screen. But obviously, PlayStation Portable hardware isn't identical to the PS2. There's no motion blur, cars when they crash don't disintegrate the same way they do in Burnout 3, the circuits aren't as detailed, there's no sponsorship of future upcoming EA titles, and they're also a little bit more glitchy. Like whenever you take down an opponent, cars are more likely to go through the circuit, sometimes straight up censoring the crashes because they're just too brutal for us sensitive gamers. The easiest way to describe the way Burnout Legends looks compared to Burnout 3 is it's running on Windows 95 on the lowest graphics settings. Now, I am saying this with the understanding that it was all to fit onto this console on a screen this size, and when you consider this is a portable game 2 decades ago, it's honestly impressive what we got. And with the gameplay intact, the satisfaction and cathartic feeling of taking down opponents like that never gets old. Even playing this on a big TV to capture footage, it's still very exciting to play. There's a lot of crazy action going on screen in one go, and proves Burnout can work on any console you throw at it. Well, nearly, but I'll get to that version eventually. Burnout Legends is essentially a compilation title with a mixture of features and content from all the Burnout titles up to that point, including circuits, vehicles, and event types, but uses the gameplay style, driving mechanics, and presentation of Burnout 3 Takedown, which should sound like the perfect racing game, right? One of the best I've ever played, then including some of the good aspects from the first two Burnout titles? Well, almost. It has the same world tour as Burnout 3, which is a worldwide hub with all the events categorized by vehicle type, and all the events are familiar to the franchise, including Race, Face-Off, Eliminator, Burning Lap, Road Rage, my favorites. Some of the opponents take a bit more effort to take down, much like Burnout Revenge, usually causing more stress than relieving it. But when you're in the zone, it's one of the most exhilarating feelings you can experience in a video game. Only Burnout games can do this. And after you complete an event, all the stats, including points, takedowns, signature takedowns, snapshots, and milestones, unlock new vehicles, which are usually the same as what's already available, with a better looking vinyl job. And completing the Grand Prix of a vehicle type unlocks the next set with a few new cities to race on or throw drivers into a concrete barrier. So all of it, the way the World Tour is structured, is exactly the same. Even the crash mode, the locations, vehicle and token placements, the crash breaker, they're all identical. Throw your car into the best spot so the traffic that suddenly lose their brakes can form a kaleidoscope of metal and tarmac. The only thing I take issue with is more to do with how a few of the events of the races are structured, like face-off and the number of laps, for example. Because there's only one opponent on the track, so if you find yourself in the lead, it's just really boring because nothing's happening, and you're either delaying the inevitable thanks to the AI rubber banding opponents, or hearing the engine noise revving beyond the limit the whole time, which is fingernails on a chalkboard. Also not helped by the reduced sound quality as another compromise to fit this game onto a UMD. One takedown the whole race and still won. It's quickly worth noting all the music from Burnout Legends would go on to be used in Burnout Revenge, since both titles were released only a week between each other, so you have a very good soundtrack here. And no DJ on Crash FM either. Again, presumably due to system limitations, but I don't think many players would be complaining. Anyway, Burnout is one of the few racing games where it's a lot more fun being in any position other than the lead. In fact, there are a few circuits that shouldn't be 3 laps, at least at the beginning. One race I crashed 4 times in a row while in last place, and was still able to get back to first before the end of the same lap. Again, excusable as it is to take down opponents for having the audacity to catch up more easily than they should, I just wish the rubber banding opponent system wasn't this blatant. All the features that are taken from the first 2 Burnout titles include Pursuit Mode from the second game, where you're in a police car taking down a speeding target. Basically like Road Rage Face-Off, but target vehicles are harder to take down. Because there was no proper takedown mechanic in Burnout 2, though it was very intense in the original game, always hoping every time you got close to the target vehicle you didn't miss. However, it feels like an outdated game mode if you already have Road Rage, where literally over a dozen opponents can be taken down in a single race, so it's a bit weird seeing a police car struggle to knock just one off the road. Well, with a few exceptions. Some of the special vehicles from Burnout 2 can be unlocked as well, and I recognize them just from the loading screens, like the one on the front cover and the NASCAR ripoff, and most of these are unlocked in Face-Off, as well as a few of the circuits, including the airport terminal, interstate loop, and Harbor Town from the first Burnout title, the first circuit you drive on in the entire franchise. In fact, almost every location from Burnout 3 on top of that is included. I would have thought they'd limit the number of circuits to meet with the system limitations on the PSP, especially if they included ones from both Burnout and Burnout 2. To fit them onto a UMD, there's only one weather type, unlike Burnout 2 which had day and night options. And because Burnout Legends uses a world tour format, the locations are depicted in separate parts of USA instead of being set in regions. Although with a few of the older locations, particularly Harbor Town, you can clearly tell they're not designed for top speed gameplay with all the endless corners, so you don't get a chance to use up all that boost since it uses the same Burnout system from the third game. It's just weird. They feel like bonus hidden levels from Burnout 3 that you unlock after 100%ing the world tour, and you drive on it for curiosity's sake. Then you go back to the Burnout 3 locations, they feel faster and wider, which make it easier to take down opponents. It also doesn't help that thanks to the blurrier graphics on the PSP, it's harder to see what's ahead compared to home console. Trying to see where the barriers are, where the corner starts, and how close the traffic headlights are. Again, I know it's more of a limitation of the console, and I know on the PPSSPP you can upscale the graphics to Full HD or 4K, but I wanted to experience the game as if I was playing this on a PlayStation Portable screen. The driving mechanics, as you'd expect, feel identical to Burnout 3. brilliant, but also very slippery. You never know the line between full grip and when it's going to go into a slide, so it's like the game is trying to make you crash, and you're trying to not let that happen. So it was easy to pick up, play, and adjust to the graphics more seamlessly. Though I don't know how this would feel playing this with a PSP, since I'm using a PS4 controller to play this game. And since you need twitch reactions to dodge oncoming traffic frequently, I imagine it wouldn't feel as comfortable as a conventional controller. Now before we conclude, let's quickly look at the Nintendo DS version developed not by Criterion but Visual Impact. Racing games can be good on this console, as Mario Kart DS, Race Driver Grid, and Sonic and Sega All-Star Racing have proved. However, when I saw the Metacritic score of the DS version compared to the PSP one, I had low expectations from the get-go. Graphically, this actually looks decent. The circuits available are recreations of the home console versions. Not all of them are in the DS version, but still impressive. You can take down opponents, you have a boost system, the music original to the game sounds like it fits in Burnout 1 or 2, albeit a bit more muffled than the PSP version, and all the game modes are here: Road Rage, Face Off, Pursuit, and Crash. So all the main parts are there. If you're watching the footage but haven't played the game yet, it might look like a decent port considering DS cards hold a tiny fraction of a PSP UMD. Unfortunately, the controls completely ruin any chance of that because they're broken beyond belief. When you're drifting, it doesn't even look like you are. The momentum when you're steering is all over the place. It feels like you have no brakes, like it's going more sideways than rotating. In crash mode, trying to hit a vehicle to start a chain reaction of traffic collisions is borderline impossible. Traffic doesn't even react to an accident, so they'll just drive around it. And the hit detection when trying to take down vehicles, a lot of the time it happens at random. They'll just veer off the road in a snap 1 second after you hit them. There's no consistency when colliding with someone, like two magnets of the same side constantly repelling away from each other. Seriously, you need to play to truly understand just how dodgy this feels. Words don't do it justice. It's horrendous. And when I knew I had all the footage I needed for this review, it was a huge relief because I never want to play this again. In hindsight, I should have talked about Burnout Legends in my Burnout 3 review because they're that similar from each other. It's a very solid PlayStation Portable conversion, the same way the Warriors, Tony Hawk's Underground Remix, Midnight Club LA Remix, or SmackDown vs. Raw 2006 have the same level of positive critical reception as the main home console versions. It was interesting to see what the inclusion of content taken from Burnout 1 and 2 would look like, combined with Burnout 3 style mayhem with a good 15 to 20 hours worth of content, and proof that gameplay matters more than graphics. Isn't that right, DS version? It looks like an early 3D racing game running on Windows 95, but I still had a lot of fun playing it. Should there have been a home console port, get EA UK, who would go on to develop Burnout Dominator, to work on it? Well, no, since Burnout 3 and Burnout Revenge on the PS2 and Xbox exist, it would have been pointless. At least Burnout Dominator, which got a PS2 port, was a completely new game from scratch. And because emulation today has gotten more and more sophisticated to the point where we could easily play Burnout 3 on our phone and use a modern controller where the footage quality and resolution look crystal clear compared to Burnout Legends, as well as making said PSP footage clearer, we can get our portable Burnout fix that way. But back in 2005, when the PSP was the most powerful portable console that came as close to the PS2 as you can get on the go, to still have 80% of what made Burnout 3 a masterpiece on a handheld is a very impressive feat, and is definitely one of the best racing games on the PSP. Gold medal with only a second to spare. Look at that. Thanks everyone on Patreon, including Anthony Cossins, Bibbs, Brittleback, Cooper Munn, Dustin McIntosh, Emmanuel Figueroa, Atmosphere, Indie DM, Ellen Craft, Night Kid Gaming, Oscar, Peter GT, Roman Arteminov, Ruben Perkolk, Sam Sneed, Tickford45, Thomas Rosendale, UZ Racer, Will Stokes, and everyone for watching this review. Spinny out.